Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of World End Economica. My name is Fudce, and we just got to a very interesting part of the story. We've suddenly realised that our old friend is involved in what's going on here. There are innumerable arrows drawn directly on the wall, leading from a financial statement from a company organisation chart to other documents. Flow of cash, flow of wealth. Although we're leading to flowcharts for a flow of information. Three of those arrows led to words Schweitzer and Zelga. Those arrow points showed Eleanor's investment bank being stuffed inside Avalon's enormous corporate organisation chart. Extending from there were the words of information and capital, all leading to a listing on a tax haven. That in turn extended out towards a major investment bank called Platinum Smith. And there was another photo hung up there. I've seen the face of this man before. He was a famous analyst, the same as Susie Wu, who was called the only real deal on the moon. Below him, Ellen had scribbled false in lipstick. Oh my life. Are Platinum Smith profiting out of false information given out by that guy? The tail end of those letters extended back out towards Schweitzer and Zelga. It was shut down. That moment, I felt something bitter spread out within my mouth. My instincts told me this was a simple outline of a terrible and large series of events that had occurred. I don't believe I could understand those feelings of wanting to take lipstick and smear out the word false on someone's picture, but Eleanor said that her company was bought out using dirty means. Then, praying for justice, pledging to act crimson flag and praying for it. I looked around the inside of this room. It had gotten this bad from her trying to realise that justice. Impossible. He uttered those words involuntarily. Eleanor's side profile on my bed, where she had curled up into a fetal position at some point. Her resting place was so innocent. Even Chris would be ashamed to see it. But that's all I could think of it. There were no doubts about this. The opponent Eleanor had to fight was almost demonic, a conglomerate with profits rivaling the GNP of whole countries. Someone that had become synonymous with investing further of a moon, the embodiment of a Sun King, Avalon. The more I thought about it, the more I understood why Eleanor took up this work as an analyst. An analyst is a prophet of the industry, and since ancient times, it has always been prophets who knocked kings down from their thrones. Susie Wu was a guardian deity of a people and was called a prophet of a stock market. That's what she meant when she said investing personal finances or gathering buyer funds as a corporation wouldn't be enough. Her goal was to instigate the populace, even if it meant being called a Pied Piper. Eleanor would establish herself as an analyst, and use that fame to defeat Avalon, by denouncing them as evil, as someone who honestly dreamed up of a standing and explored world. No, now that I'd had that dream dashed, I could understand how rash that would be. Yet I was unable to leave that place. There was a goal here, there was conviction. There was a nostalgia here that was so difficult to remove myself from, and it made me want to burst into tears. There was something to fill that gaping hole in my chest. I didn't want to leave Eleanor unattended, so I couldn't leave the room. I wanted to talk to her. My head was filled with nothing but that. I also wanted to know what sort of brash thing she'd done and how far I'd taken her. So I went through the files on a medicine right at the work desk. Contained about the analysis of a company whose name began with G. This is exactly the wake-up call I needed. This almost certainly contained any information I had on them. Given the medium, it was sure to be a hefty amount. The same way that, say, a company with its headquarters on Terra would see a lot of media coverage of its own nation. Eleanor hadn't even noted which journalist worked for which paper during that period, in which context, and the purpose of each article. The same article could have a very different tone, depending on if the journalist was biased towards industry, current events, or even the labour force. Eleanor had likely done that for as long as she was physically able. Placing markers on company employee names using their college in a file, drawing arrows to files using signifying numbers. It's like she probably looked up to who was classmates and relationships. It wasn't getting me very far, though, until I noticed a very familiar term in her notes. Social capital. a sociological theorem in which human relations serve as capital. Barton once said before this was a small world, so obviously one would look this up. Research had already been conducted extensively by scholars on nearly anything a person can dream up. That overwhelming amount of information, the analytical prowess to dissect it coherently, and that which made it possible to work on it, energy and focus. That's all I thought, no, rethought about it. She was already at the limits of focus and energy. I could only imagine her fueling up with caffeine and forcing herself to sleep with sleeping aids. It was maybe about an hour since I'd brought up into a room. An ear-shattering alarm blared, making Eleanor rise from a soft bed like a zombie. She gasped suddenly, then shutting off the alarm, she dropped her shoulders and let out a sigh, getting out of bed as if she were a death row prisoner being led to execution. That's quite the alarm clock. Still half in bed, Eleanor was startled and finally seemed to realise it was me. Oh, I had you bring me. How startling, you falling asleep all of a sudden, I mean. My apologies. I took it out of habit, but I thought I'd be awake a bit longer. Aren't you working too hard? Eleanor seemed as if she was going to respond, but after looking around, she just tittered. Doesn't seem like I can hide it. You could just lied and said you like a room like this. I'm not a hedonistic. If I had to book this room though, proper channels, it would cost 100,000 moles a night after all. 100,000? That's 70,000 moles I worked so hard for. That vanished in a day. Her guide sold herself for. That Risa had to sell off her precious books to raise. But the amount wasn't even enough for a single night. The moneylender Toyama had become ghastly thin and caused countless people to lose their homes and savings over 1 million moles. That was enough for just 10 days? Exactly how long did it take to make this room filthy? 2 or 3 months? No. It couldn't be less than half a year. I thought I understood this disparity of wealth rather than that time at Clapton Square, but the disparity with the upper classes must have been on a much, much grander scale. In fact, it seemed like there was no fixed rate. This had been reserved for an extended period, so it might be the 3rd or 4th usual rate. It could be all but free. To clear up my own misunderstandings, I'll tell you it's not on my own funds. My Susie Woo's prison was prepared by my sponsor, Platinum Smith. Prison? Meaning that under the circumstances, I really have no room to complain. Speaking as she got up from her bed, Eleanor seemed to have finally realised she slept in her regular clothes. Looking at her now wrinkled skirt, she let out an exhausted sigh. More importantly, I'm sorry. Huh? You weren't able to leave, were you? I consider the state of this room, the cost of staying, and how incredible a company would it be to reserve this room for so long term. For a brief period, I couldn't even process that she was showing me genuine compassion. For a while, I stared inanely back at Eleanor, then finally dropped my sight down to a file in my hand. Well, I certainly couldn't go anywhere while I was reading this. I raised the file slightly, as she tittered, then cocked her head to her side. It's quite unfair you can just jest with a straight face. After saying that, she gazed over at the flag hung over her mantle. Of course, there'd be no way one wouldn't notice. Most had interpreted your being unable to leave. I looked at the front and back cover of the file meaninglessly, and answered without looking up. I can't go back to the past after all. When I looked up, Eleanor gave a nervous laugh. May I take a shower first? I'm not fully awake yet. Please. She elegantly masked a yawn after I said that and rubbed her damp eyes as she staggered over into the next room. She'd appeared so sleepy since the cafe, yet I just realised this was the first time I'd seen a yawn. Jumping out of the shower stark naked, only when wearing a thin t-shirt, stacking out both her shoulders exposed, walking around, Eleanor did none of those things. When she came out from a side room, her hair was completely dry and she was fully dressed. There's not much time before my concierge arrives, unfortunately. Eleanor said apologetically. Concierge? Taping, Susie Woo's. Oh, seems pretty hectic. It's rather arduous. Given the content I have to deal with, I have to put on a rather intimidating persona. Square your shoulders and puff out your chest? Yes. You end up only able to give out a small bit of information on air, so it all comes down to how loud and aggressive you can be. So appearance was everything. Eleanor looked like a life-size French doll as she sat placidly on the gaudy curvilinear antique chair. All of her talk being loud and aggressive felt a bit out of place. However, a glimpse she showed me of a cafe was undoubtedly a TV personality. You certainly do shout and wave things around on your show. It's rather embarrassing being told that in person. She pressed her cheek with a hand that seemed to belong inside its white glove. Giving a troubled smile and tilting her head, she looked like a damsel who couldn't even harm a fly. I do feel I may be overdoing it. When I looked over to her medicine on the desk, Eleanor gave her an embarrassed smile, using the power of caffeine to be fully awake when she wakes up, and forcing herself to sleep when she needs to with sleeping pills. Her actions seemed to deny that human beings were capable of their own repeated cycles of sleep and wakefulness. I couldn't imagine that was good for one's body. But that is exactly why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. She spoke briefly, then looked at me. I am truly sorry for not explaining right at the beginning. About Barton? Barton, yes. His name is listed as Glaive Goldshower. Not long before, he often went by the name Jack Rani. I know the name. When I said that, Eleanor nodded slowly. It is said that only those close to him know as Barton. My heart aches. I spoke in jest, but my heart really may have actually been aching. It could have been your picture stuck on the wall there, possibly. Well, things are how they are now, but yeah, if I hadn't fallen for that trap back then. If I hadn't fallen for it, Hagana would have stayed at the church, and the church would still be in the city. Then I'd be Barton's right-hand man? No, enough. But I know what ifs in history. Eleanor cleared her throat and lightning spoke. I have a goal I do imagine that you were able to grasp, if not for exact details, then at least the general concept of a flowchart. It seems to be a large machine. An enormous, fraudulent machine. She spat those words. It wasn't anger or disdain on her face, but intense exhaustion. So much so, it's near impossible to sum it up in a single word. There's Avalon and Harold Broth? Yes. However, Harold Broth is a simple container. Within is the analyst Peter Eisman. The picture of a man hung up with false written over him. But yet Eleanor's face doesn't show a twinge of change in her expression. That conversely made me feel something brooding or deeping down. I heard him call the only real deal on the lunar surface. The #1 analyst of an Institutional Investors magazine yearly ranking 2 years in a row. Sage of the Moon, Peter Eisman. Eleanor dropped a gaze, saying that with only somewhat giddy chuckle. Institutional investor, meaning large pension funds, foundations, insurance agencies and the like, handing tens of billions of mools, extraordinarily popular with those individuals with vast sums of investment capital that rival them. So Susie will act as a guardian deity of the people? Yes. She doesn't have a bit of popularity amongst those gentlemen, but it's chalk and cheese. Oh, there's a connection between Peter Eisman and Avalon. There's a line from Barton to him. That's correct. My company was engulfed in the machine Eisman and Barton had built. The line extending out from Barton was funding and information, but the line from Eisman was false. Analysts are called prophets, but that is not an exaggeration of the moon of this day and age. I'm saying that Eleanor become a talkative. As investing is presently done by young and old alike, the words of analysts can truly change the market values. If they say it will rise, then it will rise. If they will soar, if they say it will fall, then it will fall. Let's say there's an analyst brandishing an incredibly high hit ratio, and everyone calls him a sage. Everyone reading his reports of reference are moving insurmountable amounts of funds. After all, they cannot read him, since he's telling them which stocks will rise, and everyone purchases it, and so it rises. Wonderful, when I'll have no problems if I follow him. That's how I played out. Eleanor gave a light chortle and mischievously tilted her head. Within that, they released an analytical report on a certain company. Of this company, he says, Low profits, practically no increase in sales. What a measly little company. Why is it such a decrepit mule of a company on the lunar surface? A sage's advice could not be wrong. A diligent analyst noticed this company's substantial losses from a previous fourth quarter. Oh man, watch these losses continue for another year. Just looking at their cash flow is going to tank. As Eleanor spoke while looking at her hand, she motioned as if she was realising something from her lap. It was almost as if I could hear the sound of something hitting the floor and being smashed. There are quite a few trading partners for even worthless companies. There are even more individuals who feel they must listen to reports of this sort of person. Individuals pull out their money all at once, rushing to recover all their credit. Even those who knew this mule was actually healthy. If there was even a chance there was a problem with this mule after seeing a report and doing nothing, they would be labelled as a fool. The same as a run on a bank. I was about to say the same sort of thing myself, actually. It does sound like a run on banks. Companies are like a heart. If there's no blood to pump, they stop moving. Even if it were black, that poor mule just stumbled over a small pebble, but had all his blood drained out, never to stand up again. Remember, people express their gratitude to that sage. Oh, that business really did tank. My, what a splendid revelation that was. A self-fulfilling prophecy. The poor mule in question was probably Eleanor's company. The buyer of that poor mule's corpse was some unknown investment firm. But after following the trail, it ended up being absorbed into Avalon. It appears they wanted to study the framework of that mule. Avalon had made vast profits of electricity trading, but it seems they were in desperate need of a back office to handle the clerical work. There they eyed a mule, slow-moving, but well-fed and raised. To build up a clerical division from scratch, when one doesn't directly profit from it, is rather tedious. Truly quite tedious. Little thanks is given to a clerical division, however it is imperative to have one. The image of Raina working in a government branch office flashed in my mind. In this world, there are jobs that people must do. That frame took a great deal of effort to build, was purchased by a magician, and now is a single part of a larger homunculus. Ella took a deep breath when she finished and let out a dejected sigh. Using revelations of a prophet, you can probably get anything you want fairly cheaply. Just for a prophet to be a prophet, you must receive truth from God. That God was... Barton? That's correct. The legendary debut of Iceman is still spoken of to this day. It was certainly moments before Avalon was listed in the lunar security markets, and the mood of the market exploded. Then, showing a level of performance which only seemed feasible on paper, at the time there was not a single person who could correctly gauge profit from profit gains of a lunar company surface. I recalled in my mind the line extending out from Barton. Funding. The other being information. Iceman had correctly guessed the company's profitability, down to a single mall. Our property being 2.7-fold, like laughing in God's face. But people had discovered a great profit to guide him into a realm beyond human's fathomability. However, she placed both her hands on her lap and stood up. Her mannerisms and features were so beautiful. If she sat in a window display, I doubt anyone would believe she was human. That is impossible normally. If you think about it. He had performed something similar to a handful of companies afterwards. If you were to clean up a majority stockholders list, you get nothing but tax havens in the name of investment firms. She was talking about the tax evasion heaven in the Cayman Islands and others in the Caribbean with no income tax. Even a few fraudulent subsidy applications going by the government office based out there. I was able to confirm that a few of those companies were owned by Barton, and that Avalon was their main business client. So Barton is leaking insider information, and that's how Iceman became a prophet? In exchange, Iceman denounces the companies he desires, driving them into their death so Barton can swoop in and buy what's left on the cheap. Thoreau said having your company taken over was watching your child be murdered. Taking up debts without knowing if it could ever make you money, starting a business, coming up against difficulties you never imagined, being betrayed by others you thought were on your side, but in spite of it all, you pressed on. What he meant was building up a company like that was the same as raising a child. Then to watch that company killed off so easily was like no greater than an ant, sucked up dry of everything. I wasn't able to move as Eleanor said that to me. But what made my head spin was the fact that her story sounded a little more like make-believe. I couldn't digest it all. for such a thing to happening. The Trade Commission couldn't be blind to. Such commissioners of a subdivision of Legal Affairs Bureau here, who are heads of state seen as fools, do not serve much purpose. In a 1-year period, there were over 10,000 cases of securities fraud brought up to them. Yet there have been but 17 cases prosecuted, none of which have ended in guilty verdicts. That's because, including the security detail, there are only 11 employees, 2 of whom are full-time lawyers. You appear to be employed at a government office yourself, Haru, so I believe you can imagine the current state of affairs. They went without saying. In actuality, it would take someone between 3 or 4 times the amount of employees of that branch to even come close to functioning properly. No matter how hard Raina tried, she was forced to pass most of her work in such cases to continue to build up. What kept things from being ruined was the fact that periodically the forgotten data vanished, so it was as though nothing had ever happened. They even lacked the human resources required to do a basic check of the headers of the collected data. Thus, even if they had done so, this problem wouldn't be exposed. Given the state of the government office branches, the overseer committee must be in an even worse state. After all, the salary of a lawyer worker working for the overseer company was low. 11 lawyers working for those overlooked were being paid tens of hundreds of times for doing the same type of work. It was hard to believe they take the job seriously. Anna drooped both her arms down, clasping her skirt lightly as she looked down. The system Avalon Iceman constructed is lightly but the tip of the iceberg. However, to uncover their evil deeds, it would require a large number of individuals to return to sanity. When you tried to make that indictment? Since all eyes were on Susie Wu, she would do it in the place of a worthless overseer committee. Certainly, I cannot state this lacks personal vendetta. However, if not too far off future, Avalon will rank alongside Emerald Industries in size. There is much to be said about that. Clasping onto a skirt, she stood in the middle of this disturbing room. Anna looked for all the world like a little girl left alone in a tantrum. But her mouth wove tales of a dream raising a fortune so large it would take more than a lifetime of a desire to flush away that greed that had piled up hundreds or even thousands of times over. Was it righteousness filling that tiny body? Was it vengeance? Either way, it was an emotion over the eyes couldn't express. However, humans could not live on emotions alone. They cannot escape with their own flesh. On this desk next to me were mounds of medicine used to bridge that gap between the emotions and the flesh. A solitary struggle. You'd laugh thinking it would be impossible normally. You'd point and laugh saying, "Here comes Don Quixote." But once, in that dilapidated church 4 years ago, a girl clad in black had once asked me, "Aren't you going to laugh?" Telling others your honest dreams was so very embarrassing. You knew they'd laugh. You knew they'd make fun of it. More so for dreams like this. It was like that for me at least. And what about Eleanor's dream? It was enough for you to laugh at, enough to make fun of it. But if you were aiming high, there was a perfectly suitable height. Do you think you can? Of course, we won't get anywhere just by telling everyone what we're doing. I fully comprehended the absurdity of a preposterous dream. But because there was a clue out there, it was enough to clench down and stretch out. There had been a great deal of suspicion to Avalon's accounting. Suspicion? The profits and earnings of Avalon are quite enormous, however. The details have never been accounted for. Avalon explained that those earnings were from electricity market trading, but I've never understood that, nor has anyone else. Iceman has also stated he cannot speak of the detailed accounts of earning numbers of being secret of his analysis working method. His whole standby is, "You'll know if you watch the market." In other words, I hesitated, realising just then I was actually taking part in his preposterous dream. Me? You want me to reveal their misdeeds? Ben announced their illegal acts of those misdeeds, pushing Avalon. When I muttered those words, Eleanor looked up a bit, and bashfully she grasped her skirt. "You had to say me first, huh? Is that what you were aiming at when you said that I could see the speculation behind the numbers? Normal people could not dramatically improve Chris's program in less than a week's time. Truly, you have a gift for investing. The ability to change human speculation into numbers. From those numbers, uncover people's speculations. It's rather mysterious, like people who can tame animals. But basically, everything I learned was from Barton." to ask me, who was tricked by Barton and lost a botsman, to reveal lies to a company directly to Mr. Lozenges, aka Botsman, who could see through the speculations of others and observe the movements of the market so much more clearly than I could. Seeming over my gaze, Ellen looked around the area, continued to smile as she spoke quietly. To be fair, it is impossible for you to do alone. I think it's probably a good point to leave off here, actually. My voice is going a bit dry, to be honest, but I'm going to leave off here. Join me again next time when I continue this. It's been a longer episode than I planned, because basically I just got swept away by the drama and what was going on. As ever, thank you very much for watching. My name is still Fudce. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.